These men, Kain Escobar and Steve Sheely, are the pilot brewers for Miller Valley Brewing, an experimental pilot brewery for the giant microbrewery that we know so well. Guys, welcome to the... Well,
oh my God.
Kain, welcome.
All right.
Kain, welcome to the Tap Takeover Podcast.
Cheers.
You've stumbled on into the Tap Takeover Podcast.
Deep in the bowels of Miller Brewery on State Street in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, two mad brewers are given free rein to tend to their bubbling cauldrons of wort. Left to their own devices, these men take liberties with whatever malt, hop, or adjunct that pleases their fancy. These men, Kain Escobar and Steve Sheely, are the pilot brewers for Miller Valley Brewing, an experimental pilot brewery for the giant microbrewery that we know so well. Kain, welcome to the Tap Takeover Podcast. And as we always like to do, let's put some voices to the names. This is Jim.
Jesus.
Andy here.
Kain.
Alex. Kain, thank you so much for having us here in the bowels of Miller Brewing. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to try some of these new concoctions that you've been working on. Give our listeners kind of an idea of where this is coming from. This is not your typical Miller product. Give us a little lowdown.
They're definitely not your typical Miller product. So we are a little different than some of the pilot facilities that some of the craft guys may have, or some of you may or may not know AC Golden, Rhino Brewery. Those guys are piloting products to sell, so they're trying to use the creative juices to get products out the door. We are mainly a research facility, so research and innovation. So we do all the new products for the entire network, along with fixing existing products, working with other departments such as our hop chemists, our cereal chemists. So a little bit of everything. And now that Molson took us over, now we're also doing stuff for the UK, Canada. So we're kind of that big workhorse that does everything from A to Z. So it's very diverse, and it's diverse on what we can do down here. So Steve and I kind of, whenever we work our butts off to get some downtime, which isn't really downtime, we kind of use the creative juices, get some wild beers going. A lot of the craft guys and the craft drinkers out there, they want some bigger beers. They want some full-bodied beers. They want something with crazy ingredients. So we kind of make that a reality down here and showcase it around Milwaukee. I just started kind of going to the festivals in Illinois this year, so showcasing some stuff down there and what we can do. I mean, most people think MillerCoors, and they're like, oh yeah, Miller Lite, Coors Light, that's cool. Good job, guys. Who were the original craft guys in the beginning, right? You didn't have a whole lot of craft breweries, 50 years ago. So it was just, oh yeah, there's brewery A, B, C, and D, and now it's booming, right? There's hundreds all over the place. So we have some good capabilities. We have some good brewers down here. We do a lot of cool stuff.
And I'll tell you what, when you talk about macro, there's something to be said for consistency. To be able to take varying ingredients from all sorts of different places. You hope you get the same contract every year, but it's not always guaranteed. And be able to put out the same product every single year that tastes just the same. There's something to be said for that.
There is. I'm going to say this, it may make some people mad, but honestly, if you can't make the same beer day in, day out, make it taste exactly the same, you probably shouldn't be brewing. Your customers expect a certain something from you, and that's what you have to deliver on.
It's a bold statement.
I want to know the history of how long you've been doing this, because honestly, as we've been going to these festivals, the standouts every time are you guys.
Definitely. We're getting a little cult following that's going around, especially Milwaukee area. So it's kind of cool. It's fun. I'll get into that, but before, I obviously need a beer, so I'm going to start us out. I'm going to start us out with a High Life, because that's usually what you'll see me drinking at a festival when I'm starting it out.
This is the beer of my youth. This is really a world-class lager.
Champagne of beers,
right?
That's right. So this was kind of Miller's claim to fame with the light stability on the hops. That's why they were able to put it in a Flint bottle. A lot of guys weren't doing that back in the day, and they couldn't. They didn't have the technology or the kind of expertise to work with and make a product like this.
You grew up in Milwaukee too. This is just the standard of youth, I think, for when you first start drinking. I mean, I'll still drink this on a warm summer day after cutting the grass.
Oh, it's a solid beer.
Oh yeah, it's got that little bit of sweetness, a little bit of effervescence. There's a couple extra bubbles or two in there. It's always a real nice one. And what I find is interesting about the Miller High Life and a lot of the other Miller products, it's what the brewers drink when they're brewing their own beer.
Exactly.
They might not come right out and say it, but some are right out there about it.
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to see it in little craft bars and tap houses and stuff. They usually have High Life in there, whether it's in a bottle or on tap, but it's usually floating around somewhere.
When we covered Smells Like a Beer Fest on a microphone, this was the brewer's beer at every single station.
Yeah.
So they got a pallet drop there.
Off Color down in Chicago does a collaboration with Miller, based on this beer. Of course, they sour it and make an imperial version of it, but this is actually their beer that they love to drink.
Yeah, no, so actually, that's kind of one of my favorite parts is we do get to play around with the collaborations, and they come through here. So I did the collab with John. He came down here, I went down to his facility, we did, High Life over here on our system, and then the makeshift modified High Life on his system. So it was really fun. It was nice to get out of the freaking cave over here. So
Yeah, I would think an imperial version of this would be fantastic, honestly.
Well, you must get out of the cave pretty often, though, don't you?
not
No,
as much
no.
as you would think. Yeah, no.
I mean, if you're dealing with all the hops with R&D, you get to travel a lot, right?
I wish. Yeah, so it's mostly the people upstairs and our bosses and stuff. They don't send the grunts out there. Kind of sad. I wish that was the case.
That's usually how it is. The
Yeah.
bosses expect you to do all the work while they go out and enjoy right, do all
Exactly.
the fun stuff.
I do head out to CBC, though, Craft Brewers Conference. I usually make it every year and just kind of check out all the cool stuff they're doing and attend to some of the talks and new technologies, new industry processes and standards.
So Kain, let's talk about you and your own personal beer journey. When you kind of got into the craft brewing aspect of brewing, what were some of your influences? What were you kind of drinking at the time? What kind of inspired you to get into brewing stuff that's not your typical Miller products?
Well, it's just kind of the way the industry started turning, right? So I actually, when I started drinking, I was definitely not a hoppy or stout kind of guy. It's like, give me something. I grew up on Coors Light. That was my bread and butter. That was it. And then once I got into college, kind of started venturing out, and the craft beer was kind of becoming more and more available, easier to get your hands on, and more craft breweries. So then started experimenting, trying different beers, and just kind of fell in love with some of them, and got some styles that I really liked. My palate is what drives kind of what I'm making down here.
So, Kain, we're talking about your journey. Where did you grow up? Are you from the Milwaukee area originally?
No, originally California. So homegrown Californian, sadly. But so went to Davis and did my bachelor's in brewing at Davis. So food science emphasis in brewing. Actually fell into that by accident. So I started as a chemical engineer. I absolutely hated it. I'm sorry for all those chemies out there. Midway through, when I was going to switch majors, I had taken an intro to beer and brewing class with Charlie Bamforth, kind of the Pope of Foam out there, the legend. Took an intro to beer and brewing and fell in love with it. And then I found out it was a major. So I'm like, done, Mom. I'm going to make beer now. It's no longer chemical engineering. I mean, I was either going to go into the beer scene as a chemie anyways, the ABI, the Budweiser plant in Fairfield right down the street. I was like, all right, cool. That'd be a good venture. I'd always wanted to work for Coors back in the day. Again, growing up on Coors Light, it's like,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome. That'd be a dream. And it just kind of fell into that. So it was either weapons as a chemie or beer. And then I just went straight beer. So did that. Had Charlie kind of put in a good word for me, and I started working as an intern for Shiner. So I did 6 months before I graduated with them. Met some really cool people. Went to a Master Brewers conference and met some more folks from Miller. So had a job lined up before I graduated. And then as soon as I finished my degree, December 26th, off to Texas. So I was working at the Fort Worth production plant, starting in quality. So my intro to beer on the essentially professional level was in the quality scene, which I'm very fortunate to, one, had started in big beer, and then two, started with the quality foundation. I mean, a lot of guys don't have that out there. Some are trying their hardest to get it. They're going to extra, extended education and stuff, which is great. That's what they need to do, because the quality scene, I mean, that's just going to build your foundation. So lucky enough, I started there, moved into the brewing department, and then from there off to Milwaukee. So I've been here almost 4 years now, 3 years, 9 months. So it's been a fun ride.
And you started right away with Miller Valley, the craft one division?
No, I started at the big production plant in Texas. Yeah. So
No. I'm saying when you moved here, was your main purpose just to do that?
Yeah, I came in as a pilot brewer right away. So working on our 10-barrel system. We're actually split into two segments. So small side and big side is what they're known at. So whenever you hear Miller Valley, it's usually the big side. It's usually myself and Steve. But we have a small side that's kind of a glorified homebrew system. It's a dual wall-mounted 40-liter system.
Oh, wow.
So a lot, they get tons of projects. A lot of projects start through there. There may be a project that has maybe 9 prototypes to it, and then they'll chop it down and it'll make its way to us, and then from there maybe go down further, or they'll narrow it to a single project.
Since you started 4 years ago, I guess, has any one of those beers seen the light of day?
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of beers. None that I would extremely be gung ho about. But we do feed everybody and anything. So a lot of our flavored malt beverages, so like all our Reds products, those all come through here. The Big Eddie's series came through here once upon a time. A lot of the newer liney brews, we feed all that. Before, we had some hiccups with licensing. We used to also feed our craft cider division, mess around with ciders down here as well, which is kind of cool. And then we feed our craft divisions, such as your 10th and Blake, which is Terrapin, Revolver, Hop Valley. So all those guys, we help them out with projects. We scale up products, so if they're going to get moved to a different brewery, some of their products, we help them out. So we got our hands in everything.
So you work a lot on scaling then, because there's a expansion going on over on 10th Street. So then you got these microbreweries that have now come into the fold, but they need to be brewing at scale in a much larger system. What are some of the challenges on doing that?
Some of the challenges, a big challenge is, especially when we are doing scale-ups for some of our craft guys, is they may not have the ability to pasteurize product. And so in order for it to be made at one of our larger facilities, it either has to be flash pasteurized, tonal pasteurized, or Pall filtered. We won't allow anything that's not been one of those 3 out the door for stability and micro reasons. So you have that one concern, and obviously that's going to impact your flavor profile match. So you're trying to narrow that upscale of the bigger brewery to match exact characteristics of what those craft guys are actually looking for. So if I'm making Revolvers, Sidewinder, or something like that, we're going to be sending products to Texas. They're going to be coming over here, checking on the process, seeing how we're doing it. They're going to be tasting it, and then from there we may scale it to the next brewery, right? And they're going to be doing the exact same thing.
So when beginning to scale, do they send a bunch of different batches to you guys as well?
So we'll get some kind of like reference samples. So we'll send them some reference, and obviously we'll taste them.
Yeah.
Right, of course. But we also kind of crunch some analyticals. So a lot of that's even with our guys. A lot of the numbers don't match up what they're saying they are.
Sure.
So. And it's not that they're doing anything wrong. It's that they may not have the equipment to run some of those nitty gritty tests.
I imagine there's different efficiencies that different systems.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Every system's going to have its own efficiency. It's really system dependent. It is also brewer dependent. It shouldn't be, but that it also plays into effect.
So do you run like some of the chemical tests, some of those
all the
stupid
analyticals?
machines?
Yeah. So we're actually lucky enough to have our corporate microbiology lab and our corporate analytical lab upstairs. So we bombard them like crazy with samples on everything and anything. You think SO2s, metals, Seaver sample, you name it, bottles, you name it. We'll send it upstairs and get hard data, so we actually know what we're doing. I mean, you can only make so many changes, on an educated guess, but if you have the facts to back it up, you can really manipulate the systems and make it turn out exactly how you want.
Have there been any that you've had to make fairly significant changes to the recipe?
There have. So I'm not going to throw down specific
you
names.
can talk about, yeah.
Yeah, but we have had some of our craft guys, so we'll be doing projects for them, and then as soon as we make the product off what the numbers are supposed to be like, and we run what they send us, we're like, holy crap, these do not match up. Right? They're saying one thing, but their product's showing another. So then that's part of also fine-tuning and helping them fine-tune their process.
Well, yeah, right, your breeding consistency is only going to help their brand too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do those projects come in? Like, who determines what you're going to be working on?
So that's kind of the hard part. We cater to everyone and their mothers, I like to say, because we're getting requests from everybody. Like
everyone's money's green. Right?
Exactly. Everyone's our customer. So we're dealing with the craft guys, our cereal chemists, hop chemists. A lot is marketing driven. They'll come out with ideas and say, hey, we need this done. And then that's where our developmental brewers upstairs, they're kind of that interface between recipe development and the marketing side of the business. And then we're the doers over here. So we'll tweak and refine stuff. So we kind of feel the hurt first in certain recipes as well, because if something isn't acting to standard or it's causing a lot of problems, we're the ones that are going to have the problems, and then we can, relay that feedback on the big breweries or whoever is going to, hey, this may not work because it's going to be this or that. We have the good days and the bad days.
That sounds pretty challenging, being able to take whatever idea somebody comes up with and just execute it, to the best of your abilities.
Yeah, we've had some recipes where, as a brewer, we kind of chat amongst ourselves and we're like, God, this is an abomination. I can't believe I have to do this. But besides the brewing side, we're also soda makers. We used to do cider. We do a lot of flavored malt beverages. Pump out a lot of flavored malt beverages, neutral malt beverages. So a lot going on.
Speaking of a lot going on, one question that we always like to ask all of our brewers is if you could kind of take over the taps at the Tap Takeover Podcast, which brews at your brewery would you choose to kind of tell the story? It's a different sort of question.
It's not really telling the story of Miller because the story is 160 years old.
It's a different sort of question for you here at Miller Valley. So, if you want to throw maybe one regular Miller product on,
sure.
But then kind of talk about some of the beers that really you've kind of made your name on with the Miller Valley Brewing.
Yeah, so that story would be kind of the story of Steve and myself, right? So obviously there were brewers prior to us that have thrown out some awesome products, but currently how it stands, I actually attend almost every single festival that we go to. I think I missed one this year because I was in a different state, but out of the 20-some, I think I did 22 this year. And it's all volunteer work, baby. We're not getting paid for that.
It's a lot of weekends. That's half the year.
Yeah, so we oh man, it's really hard because obviously I would have some high life. That's bread and butter as a brewer. That's your go-to. And we've chatted about this. Obviously kind of chewing our end game we would love to open a brewery. Probably won't happen. It's nice having a stable paycheck and insurance. But definitely you have to have a Pilsner or a lager, lighter lager of some sort. That's a staple. You need to have something like that, something crisp, refreshing that's going to bring in that clientele that's a little scared of the Russian Imperials and all your heavier, hoppier, maltier beers. So you need kind of like a little intro, and then definitely would have a stout.
Is there a Pilsner that you could point to that has been successful for you guys at Miller Valley?
So we actually did the collaboration with the 150th.
Cool.
With Hofbrau. So that was a fun one. I think if I was to have one, it would probably be similar to the High Heat, which I'll have you guys try later. That was actually one we did with the Milwaukee Brewers. So fun beer. It was kind of Miller Lite-esque with a little higher ABV and dry hopped. So it had a little more essence to it. So that's kind of what I would go for if I was to shoot on something like that. And
so
then
something like that is when you said you collabed with the brewers. That obviously didn't make it to the stores. Is that more like a corporate thing?
So we actually had Corey Knable was originally going to come down with us, but he was in rehab. So we had Josh Hader and Taylor Williams come down.
Nice.
And, yeah. And so Corey wanted something Miller Lite-esque, right? So they're like, well, we want to continue with that. So we designed a beer for him, and was that High Heat. We actually showcased it at Miller Park. So we did that, a beer for them, and then a beer for LePay and Schroeder. So the announcers, they had their own beer. So it was kind of like a head-to-head beer competition on who would win. So they did private votes and all that. So Brewers won. Exactly.
So, Kain, I don't know if you've listened to this podcast before, but we don't need to wait till later to try that beer.
Okay, perfect.
So,
all right. Well, let me.
We'll continue the Tap Takeover as we pour the next beer.
Let me start the gauntlet then.
All right, so now we got this High Heat, right?
We got some High Heat. That's right. So this is a Imperial Light Pilsner that we dry hopped with laurel and lemon drop.
you can smell it a little bit on the nose.
Yeah. So I wish it was. It's got some age on it. We actually brewed this in
It's like July.
May.
Oh,
in
May.
May.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So the dry hop note's obviously a little diminished.
So when they said they want a Miller Lite S beer, is there such thing as you take Miller Lite as a base beer and add to it, or how does that?
I mean, you could, yeah. So we actually did a similar recipe base as Miller Lite, brewed it like a Miller Lite with enzyme and all that good jazz, and then cut it to a certain alcohol and dry hopped it. So we actually wanted a little a little higher in ABV, but Miller Park cuts it off at 7, so we did 6.9. 6.99, so we're just right there.
It's nice. I like that lemon drop hop in there. It adds that little citrus flavor.
Yep.
It's
kind of like lemon lime
it's
zest.
coming, maybe it's the H on the thing, but it's coming across almost like a Saison. You know, there's, I don't know, just like a dryness at the back end that I'm really kind of digging.
Yeah,
Crisp dry finish.
Yeah, it is. And then, the bitterness of the hops is really an interesting contrast because you look at it and you have an expectation, and then it comes across your palate very differently.
So is this something in the works for next year too? Probably a yearly thing with the brewers?
Yeah, that's kind of what it's been sounding like. We did one with Eric last year. We did an IPA for him, so that was a fun little project. And then this year with the boys, Josh and Taylor. So we'll see. We'll see who we're doing with it, who we're brewing with next year.
So the both beers had player involvement. They actually came here. And
Yeah, they were actually here pouring hops. You know, we made them drag hose and do the fun stuff. Yeah,
A beautiful light finish, especially for a summer Brewers game. But you also mentioned stouts. You got to put a stout on the Tap Takeover.
Oh, yeah, of
which
course.
You've had a number of very successful ones that we've been able to try at the different beer fests. Can you narrow it down to one, or we'll let you throw a couple of stouts on if you like?
Oh man, you know, I actually got a couple for you today. Some cool barrel aged ones. I want to say probably my favorite. I know Steve's favorite is the Hugs and Kisses, which I have here today. That's a 2014 brandy barrel aged cherry Doppelschwartz.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I have some. I went to the stash and pulled some out for you guys.
that's what you should do.
It's the cachet of the
When you
podcast.
have such luminaries here.
I'd say one of my favorites is the George Dickel Tickle. It's a bourbon barrel aged maple milk stout.
Yeah.
So I actually won the Miller homebrew competition with that recipe, and then the reward was, hey, you get to brew it in Miller Valley. So I'm like, crap, I get more work. But so we took it a step further, and we ended up buying some barrels and put it in George Dickel bourbon barrels, hence the George Dickel. I actually started the barrel age program probably 3 years ago. So like right when I got here, started doing a lot of barrel aging. So you start seeing a lot, higher influx of barrel aged stouts and just crazy stuff. So it's been fun. It's been fun kind of data collecting and trending some of the barrels. I want to say my favorite is Heaven Hill, like hands down. If I'm going to do bourbon, Heaven Hill is like the bee's knees for me. I love
That
it.
seems to be an industry standard.
Yeah.
People love those Heaven Hill barrels.
How do you get budget for all these projects? Like, how do you get to determine how much you get to spend on some of this fun stuff?
So some projects already have their budgets built in, right? So that's already set in stone. As far as the fun, quote unquote, fun stuff, we do have a yearly budget, so we do have to be mindful of that. And it's really kind of an educational portion for us sometimes. So if I do get a chance to make a brew that's different, that I'm going to be showcasing at a festival or something, I take the opportunity to learn something out of it. Whether it's a new malt, a new hop, a new piece of equipment, you name it. I'll do something fun. We actually just commissioned our cereal cooker again, and so I was like, all right, let's do a cereal cooker brew and let's make a triple. And with that, we'll try some different hops and some different malts that we have, because we work a lot with our hop suppliers, so we'll get a lot of the experimental hops when they first come out. So we get to play with that, which is really fun.
Yeah, because there's new stuff coming out all the time.
Oh,
and there's
yeah.
innovation going up and down the supply chain, from new varietals of hops, from new innovations in barley, too, which you wouldn't think would be able to change that much, but there's some big changes coming in from those barley growers and just the genetics that they're messing with.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
It's got to be the best part is you get to play with it first, probably.
Yeah, exactly. You get to play with it and understand it and see how it reacts.
So do you have a lot of people trying to pick your brain about what's new coming down the pipeline?
The smart ones, yes. The outlook is kind of changing now, which is good. But when I first got over here, there was a lot of, you're big beer? Yeah, Miller? Yeah. So, you kind of got shunned a little bit. And the ones that understood, they're like, oh, yeah, tell me about this, tell me about that. And I want to just pick your brain and learn every little aspect and keynote that I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And, I mean, we're very open. I mean, we help a lot of our craft guys. So drop names, Third Space. I mean, good friends with Kevin. We'll run analyticals for them now and again and help those guys out. So got a good rapport with a lot of the craft guys locally.
Is that something that has to go through the chains, or they just call you directly? I mean,
yeah, it's like you know a guy. It's one of those.
yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, not everybody's got a full-time lab that you can just run whatever kind of sample that you want
Yeah, exactly.
out there. That's a huge advantage that you guys have over some of the smaller breweries.
So what's going to be hot in 2019 then? What's the hot new thing?
You mean trend-wise or something that we're going to pump out?
Both trend and what's the new hop coming down the pipeline?
We just started playing around with some Cashmere and Idaho Gem, Idaho 7. So those are kind of the ones we're messing around with right now. We have some others that just have experimental numbers on them. Those I probably shouldn't talk about, but we're checking around with those, playing, kind of seeing what components, characteristics are actually putting out in your beer.
No flavor characteristics for us?
Yeah. So we play a lot with flavor on the flavor house realm. So we have a lot of flavor houses we work with. Everything from the new hop flavors that are coming out, hitting the market, to you name it. I mean, it's funny because we do so much of the new innovation that how the whole glitter beer scene got real hot. Right? Okay, so
No, I don't.
Yeah, right. So
for like 45 days.
Exactly, right, for that 1 month. So here's the funny part, because right before that happened, it got really, they were showcasing it at CBC and all that. So I found a box with tons of food grade glitter in our storage cabinet that was from 2008. And so I called the supplier. I'm like, hey, I found these. Can I use these? He's like, yeah, they're still good. They probably just, they settle out a little faster, but you can still use them. I'll just send you fresh stuff. So we for St. Patrick's Day, we did Packer High Life with this green High Life with gold and green glitter.
That's cool.
But you think about it, 08, that's been sitting in our cabinet since 08. So, and it's barely hitting the market and kind of coming a buzz now.
That was way
ahead of their time.
Which is kind of the bad part. So a lot of the beers, as this whole pilot facility was kind of revamping, and so it was established in 2000. First off, just let me lay that out. So they established this place in 2000, and from there started feeding kind of the innovation network, and then doing the R&D, other research. But from there, a lot of the brews were kind of ahead of their time. So it kind of got put in the closet, and and then that time came and we never jumped on it, right? So that became a problem of kind of being behind the 8 ball, which we had a grapefruit IPA 5 years prior to it actually becoming popular. If we would have launched it then, it would have been a flop, right? And then we didn't launch it at the right time. So
tell me about the process when you guys get a new experimental hop in. How do you guys experiment with that? Do you guys have like a base brew that you brew with every hop so you can kind of see what that distinctive hop flavor is, or do you kind of brew a beer around that hop? What does that look like exactly for you guys?
So it depends. We used to have a designated hop chemist. And so they would always deal with growers and play around with the hops, and they'd get all the new hops and design experiments around those hops, and then we would brew them on a base beer, which would be High Life. Funny enough, it's a solid base. So we do High Life for a lot of our kind of trials of malt and hops.
That's really interesting.
And then if we're trying to do something fun, so if there's something I want to showcase somewhere for a special event or something like that, then I'll build the beer around that hop. If that hop wants, if I want to showcase that hop specifically, then I'll build something around that to cater and suit that.
So we talked about the stouts. Probably time for a stout in our glasses.
Okay.
And as we're pouring that stout, I guess I was just wondering, I'm not clear about this. Is everything a one-off?
Most of the stuff I take to festivals are one-offs. That's kind of the super crazy stuff. That's which makes us popular with everyone. But most of it, they're all one-offs, sadly.
Okay.
All those recipes are in a file somewhere, right?
That's true. So if marketing ever says, "Hey, we want this," I'm like, "Boom, we got you." Kind of switching it up and making it interesting. I have a non-dairy milk stout for you.
So when was this brewed?
This is an old one too. This is probably brewed in November of last year.
But this made an appearance at some of the festivals this year, right?
Yeah, so this guy has been holding on tremendous. It's kind of crazy how well it's held up as far as flavor stability.
Since you talk about everything's a one-off, but you still have some, how much do you actually make of that one-off?
It depends. So it's dependent on how much storage space we have, because we are limited, so that kind of hinders us a little bit. And then the batch size. So like this triple that I made, I have currently 4.5 barrels of it, maybe 5 barrels.
So it's really dependent on the system that you brew it on, or?
No, it's not the system. It's just really how much we want. If it's something we're going to be showcasing in a lot of festivals and we know it can hold up, then we'll package a little more. If it's something that we know the shelf life is going to be a little less, we may only do a couple cases. Maybe it only makes an appearance at 3 fests and stocks my fridge. But that's about it.
Let's get into this beer here.
Yeah, Jim, what are you tasting here? Cause,
a lot of chocolate. I don't know if it's the non-dairy milk, and I'm interested to know what that is. I'm immediately envisioning you pouring a lot of little packs of creamer.
Non-dairy creamer? No, no, it doesn't. We're kind of limited to that on the on the craft beer scene. We can't just go out and go buy stuff and toss it in our tanks. It doesn't work that way. Quality would have our butts, so it's all got to go through quality approval and stuff. So this one is kind of a one-off. So we actually cannot have lactose in any of our breweries because it's an allergen. So this is my solution to, hey, we don't have a milk stout. Let's get a milk stout out there. Let's have something that's going to taste like a milk stout, but without the lactose components. You could still put it in any upscale, any large brewery.
I think it's a really successful experiment. You almost get like a cafe con leche kind of flavor from it.
So I like to say it tastes like Cocoa Puff milk. So you just finished your bowl of Cocoa Puffs and you're slurping the bowl of milk. Yeah.
Now, did you add chocolate, or is that just from the malts?
That's just straight from the malts.
Wow. I mean, it's got a huge chocolate-based flavor.
That's
on
impressive. That's really impressive.
But this one's 7%.
Like, this is awesome. So what's the next step? Is this just kind of goes and fades away, or does someone from up high say, do this again? In all reality, I wish that wasn't the case, but yeah, it'll probably fade away. But if for some reason we ever do want to kind of pump out a milk stout out there, this is a viable option. It's already been written. It's already been made. So if they say, hey, give me this, I can have it to you tomorrow. Something like that. You kind of have some free reign to do fun stuff. If you're kind of maybe stuck or something, you're like, man, I really want to do that beer again. Could you just do this again?
Potentially. I mean, there's always got to be a bit, it's got to cater to the business, right? How am I helping the business at the end of the day?
Oh,
right?
It just can't be just for fun,
Yeah.
Because you need more beer.
Yeah. Mind you, there's a lot of gray area that you can play with that, but...
So is this something, too, like you guys do? You do contract brew for a lot of different craft breweries. Is this something like a craft brewery would come to you and say, hey, can you help us out with a recipe? We want to work with you on creating a recipe? Is that something you guys do for people with stuff like this?
Yeah, we don't do that specifically. We're kind of the Black Ops of brewing, so we're very, very hush-hush. obviously, as you can tell, we're in the subfloor of the technical center, so...
They hide you away from everybody.
Deep in the bowels.
Yeah, you had to hide from security. And
I just hope we make
the
it out of
dogs.
All right, well, I think this is a good time to take a little break, pour some more beers, and be right back after some beer news.
That's right.
Welcome to Beer News, certified fresh as of January 10th, 2019. Happy New Year to all our listeners. As we celebrate our second anniversary on January 11th here on the podcast, we want to take a moment and thank you, our loyal listeners. This show wouldn't be possible without you. This week's easily accessible beer is Three Sheep's Veneration, a Belgian-style quad brewed with figs and molasses and aged in rye whiskey barrels. Veneration is a homage to the Trappist brewers of Belgium, the monastic forefathers of beer. The smell is of figs, malt, whiskey, rye, dates, plums, light smoke, and oak. The taste pretty much follows along with the same, smooth, somewhat creamy, with a solid full body. In beer news, this upcoming list of releases will most likely be getting pared down as the partial government shutdown continues. The shutdown means that no new beers can be approved as long as the TTP is closed. With that being said, so far 2019 looks like it's going to be a banner year for a variety of craft beer. Eagle Park has their next release on this Saturday, January 12th. Double Snowball is a 10% imperial version of their milk stout brewed with cacao and toasted coconut. Venture Brewing has a collaboration release on January 19th, the Brew City Bruisers Kosh. Learn about the Brew City Bruisers, the local roller derby team, and drink some beer. Raffles and info about the new season will be happening throughout the night. Firestone Walker announces its first ever hazy IPA, Mind Haze. It's official. Hazy IPAs have gone mainstream. Expect to see Mind Haze wherever Firestone Walker is distributed. Breaking news on Topping Goliath's highly sought-after stout Assassin. A release date of March 30th has been set. Details on when tickets go on sale are still to follow, but clear your weekend if you happen to be one of the lucky few to score a ticket. In festival news, it's a new year, and I know the TTP crew is ready to hit the beer fest circuit once again. The question is, are you? Reports coming in are the festival attendance was down across the board in 2018, except for the biggest and most sought-after ones. Will 2019 continue the downward trend, or will Fest bounce back? Send us your feedback on any of our social media accounts. To start the new year is Antioch's Winter Beer Riot on January 26th from 1 to 5 p.m. Wristbands are going quick, so sign up now. Next on the circuit is the Midwinter Beer Fest hosted by the Milwaukee Ale House in the 3rd Ward of Milwaukee on February 17th, noon to 5 p.m. Tickets are on sale now. And in general news, some interbrewery drama is occurring on the East Coast. Employees of Hill Farmstead who invested money to help start Tired Hands are suing that brewery. Their case states that the owners of Tired Hands did not pay back on the investment in a timely manner as agreed. Stay tuned to see how this plays out. And this has been Beer News.
That's right.
We are back. Thanks so much for another awesome edition of Beer News. I don't know how you do it every week. During the break, Kain poured out a couple other beers here. Do you want to explain what we got in front of us? We got two different ones, right?
Yeah, I got two beers for you. I'm trying to keep you on the lighter of the palate side until we hop over to under the dark side. So I got one beer that does not have a name yet, as far as what it will be called at the festivals, and then I have another one called the Big Labrewski. I was asked why the fancy label. So most of our products that you'll see, a lot of people go to the festivals and they'll like, oh, let me see the label. We'll grab our bottles. It'll say sample only, not for resale. That's for legal purposes. So all our products are going to have that on there for the most part. Some of our products will have a fancy, nice label, and the reason being they do kind of like a fundraiser auction, and they auction off the opportunity to be able to brew down in Miller Valley. Got the Donald Driver fundraiser, a bunch of different fundraisers around the city. So they'll auction off a brew day, and then people bid on it, and some people get it cheap, some people pay $30,000 for it. It's just all over the place. Part of that is they get their own beer. So we design a beer specifically for them. They design a label, and we package it, and we give them a set amount of product, and so they get a nice little fancy label with whatever picture or name they want to put on it.
So who was this one?
That one was Patrick Lupar.
And it still has the same sample only and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
they're still going to say sample only, but they just get a nice graphic, they get the name. I guess I'll start with unnamed beer. This was actually for one of those auctions. One of our trucking companies that works with us a lot, they happened to win the auction for one of their retirees. So they wanted something kind of like Peroni, but with a little more something to it. So we did a higher ABV Peroni, in a sense, like a higher ABV, and then we dry hopped it.
It did seem like there's a little more there than just a typical lager.
Mm-hmm.
That must be the dry hopping.
Yeah, so we hopped it with Idaho Gem.
So is Peroni part of the Miller?
Yep, Peroni is one of our portfolio
kind of
brands.
Similar to what we were talking about, the high heat. Do you start Peroni as the base beer then?
It's not cut and clear and easy. Sometimes we can't really find recipes. We got to go through a bunch of loopholes, but we'll find the original recipe and then start tweaking from there. If it's something that's already in our portfolio, why reinvent the wheel?
That's got to be pretty cool. I mean, craft brewers get to experiment with their own recipes, which they came up with just a couple of years ago. You guys get to experiment with recipes that have been around for sometimes hundreds of years.
It's a much bigger portfolio to experiment with too.
Yeah, a much bigger experiment, Bill, where you can just dive into the past stuff and see what worked, what didn't, what could work with new ingredients that are coming out. That's got to just be a thrilling aspect of what you do.
Definitely fun.
So is there a giant book of recipes that you get to reference to, or is there a database or something? I just imagine you got this
Yeah, we have a folder full of years of just kind of collected data of stuff we've done down here. So if we have a new project that's coming up and we're like, you know what, we think maybe Lautering's going to react like that beer, we'll go back, see what we did as far as Sparge Water additions, all that, and maybe try mimicking it.
No, this lager is pretty fantastic, and the amber that you put in front of us also pretty darn tasty. What's going on with this guy?
Yeah, another auction brew. The guy that wanted this beer, he said, I want an amber. I'm like, well, okay. So what kind? How do you want it? Do you want a certain flavor component? He's like, I love Louis Demise and River West Stein. Those are my go-to. All right. I'm like, how about a little maltier? He's like, yes, done. So I'm like, all right. So I started cranking, and whenever I'm like starting to design a new recipe, if it's something from scratch that we don't have, that I haven't done before, then all right, onto the internet, the Google, right? So start looking at what some of the guys are putting up for specs, whether they're alcohol specs, BU specs, going to your AHA website and seeing, some of the the recipes over there, what they're using my experience and knowledge on certain malts and hops, and okay, I kind of want this certain little bite or a certain malt backbone or a certain component for that beer. Then I go through my mental Rolodex. I'm like, oh yeah, I use this malt for this beer, and I liked how that functioned, and I like what it gave me, so maybe I can incorporate that in this.
I think earlier you said that microbrewers come to you for help sometimes,
Yeah, which is funny, because...
Does that go the other way?
It does. I mean, a lot of them don't know I'm doing it, right? But I'm probing them for knowledge as well, because we're not an 800 million barrel facility down here. We're a 10-barrel brewery. We are laid out like a production facility. The only difference is I don't have a license to sell. I'm strictly research and innovation. So that's our only difference. I mean, our small side, all their stuff is homebrew corny kegs, right? They're blending products in homebrew corny kegs. We're doing benchtop blends. So we do take some of the practices of some of the craft guys and kind of see what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and do our kind of big brewer spin on it.
So from like a day-to-day, your like work setting is just like any other brewery that we've been to, the smaller ones? Or...
Yes and no. So we are a brewery, but it's a bit of a shit show down here for the fact that we're constantly changing what we're doing. So my schedule probably changes 5 times a day, depending on what new incoming projects are coming in. So I'm juggling existing projects, new incoming projects. So it's not like laid out where you have, hey, I'm working with a distributor. They want this much volume. Here's my production schedule for the month. I'm barely able to hold up my a schedule for 5 days, and that's like the strong. Past that, it's all right. Who knows? We'll see how Friday shows up, and I may be changing this for 5 other projects.
So how many turns do you do a day?
1 to 2 brews a day. It depends. It depends on what we're brewing. Most of the time, it's 1 brew a day. So we run 1 shift, but we also have flex hours. So it may be an 8-hour shift. It may be a 16-hour shift. We may have to be here at midnight, depending on what we're doing. It just dependent. We're very flexible. So that's where it differs from a regular brewery. Is there's less flexibility. Obviously, you kind of have your hard production schedule set. We're kind of all over the place. We're just trying to cater to our customers, which are the consumers and the requesters.
Do you get to prioritize, or does that get sent down to you too?
No. Yeah, we do a lot of the prioritizing, but a lot of the projects already have their priority. So, like I said, we may have something laid out, and then all of a sudden this project comes in. It's like, oh, that's like impacting, Molson Coors Global, so they need this ASAP. Yeah. So then that bumps, kind of trumps whatever I had in plan, and now I have to incorporate that into the schedule and how it's gonna, waterfall down.
So tell us about the team that you have in place. Is it do you have a regular team? Are you pulling from other shifts during other brewing processes? What does that look like when you're putting together like a bigger project?
Sure. So we down here in MVB, we're very tight niched. We have a small little crew. The large side, which is Miller Valley, MVB. There are 2 full-time employees over there, myself and Steve. So we run the show over there, and then we have another full-time who's kind of our assistant brewer. His position is going to be flip-flopping, helping small side and big side. But right now we've been training him to do all our stuff, so he can help us out. And so he's like our third core. It's really the 3 of us running the show over there and making things happen. And then our small side is ran by another 3-person crew, 2 full-times, 1 temporary full-time. So contingent worker, and they do all the small side work. So, and that's just recent. We just finally got a full staff, so we were running kind of skeleton crew for a while. So it's kind of nice, and we're like, oh crap, all these extra bodies. All right, cool.
It's weird to hear.
Start scrubbing.
It's weird to hear that because you think Miller and you think you have everything behind you.
No.
It's all about margin, Jesus. So.
Yeah. Concern that always comes up with brewers is space. You were talking about a barrel aging program. Where do you put the barrels? Where do you put this stuff?
Yeah, that is a good question. Wherever I can put it. It's very tight down here, so we really don't have a lot of room, especially when they're trying to bring in new equipment. And they're like, well, all right, starting to measure. And like, yeah, that's the only little square we have left. So it does get very tight. And it being a pilot facility, it's hard to get some smaller scale equipment. So like our can line, like not a fan of it. But back in the day when they put it in, that was the only vacuum pressure canner. That was it. And so nowadays, they're making smaller platform, smaller profile products and equipment, which is nicer. But for a barrel aging, literally I have my barrel racks under my stairs, under my brew house. When I fill them, they move from the brew house to our little side room, and then back and forth wherever we need room. So if we get some sugar in or some bags of malt, all right, barrel's got to get moved.
Even Miller gets to play Tetris, right?
Oh, dude, I play so much Tetris. I'm probably the master. My schedule alone is a giant game of Tetris.
Right, so you have a lot of the same challenges as some of the craft breweries.
Well, okay, so
even within the shell of the big guys.
Here's what I like to say: we all make beer. Beer's made the same way, right? It starts with A, ends with D. All right. The only difference is maybe I have some better toys. Maybe you have a better, barrel program. That's the only difference. But we're all making beer at the end of the day, and we're all doing it the same way.
Speaking of beer, I think we're ready for the
beer.
next one.
All right, well, I'm gonna switch you guys up.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go into the flavored malt beverage realm.
This one brings us back to an earlier question about the scene at the festival.
Sure.
Because what you're about to pour, and you can tell us more about it, was a big hit at Firkin last year.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about just that whole scene and how people have accepted you being under the umbrella of Miller?
The way we kind of portray ourselves, we let our beer do the talking. People see the Miller name and they kind of start to shun us away and be like, yeah, big beer, whatever. So we really bring our A games whenever we go to these festivals to showcase our capabilities and what we're able to do. So this guy right now, that what you're tasting, is called Good Old Fashioned Water, and that was kind of Steve and I's take on the hard seltzer craze. So I know we have the Henry series, right? 4-point change in ABV. So again, myself liking the higher ABV products took it a next step further. So I took our neutral malt base, barrel aged it in Heaven Hill bourbon barrels, finished it off for it to taste like an old fashioned. So it's got a lot of orange component, a lot of cherry component. It's got a little bit of that bourbon, but it drinks like a LaCroix, and it finishes clean and crisp, but it's 9%.
How did you do the flavorings for the kind of curacao and the cherry?
Yeah, so we work, again, like as I mentioned earlier, we work a lot with flavor houses. So we did a little some Luxardo cherry and some orange natural flavors to get those components in there. And then the barrel aging added that little kind of oaky dryness along with the bourbon, slight bourbon note.
I would say the bourbon barrel aging has done wonders to this water. I mean, it's fantastic.
You get to sneak in here. You guys have like a MillerCoors like Christmas party. You get to sneak stuff like this in.
The only Christmas thing we have is the light show that they do every year, and so this year, all the years we provide the chocolate lager for it.
Oh,
the Frederick Miller chocolate lager. Yeah. This will be the first year it's actually commercialized, though, since 2006. So it's actually hitting select accounts around Milwaukee. And then I believe they're selling crowlers in the gift shop.
Has ever any talk, like you guys, like putting stuff you guys brew, like as one-offs down at Miller Time Pub or anything like that?
So there's a lot of talks on that. Actually, we're finally getting the right people in place and knowing the right folks in marketing. We've been working with some of the guys from marketing, and it's sounding more and more of a reality. Obviously, the whole chocolate lager, it's now commercialized. So from there, we'll be pumping out 1855 from here for select accounts. We potentially may be doing the IPA we did for the IPA competition, the If I Could I Would, and then maybe one of our Hefeweizen.
That only makes sense because they've bought all these microbreweries. Needs cachet.
Sure.
And I think...
Well, the way I look at it is we need street cred, right?
Yeah.
That's how we're going to get our street cred. I would love for them to just give us a tap room and just let us go wild. I mean,
so would we.
Yeah, right?
AB allows Goose still to do quite a number of things.
Oh, sure.
Even though, they have a quota of 312 they got to make, right? But
exactly.
That's actually a really interesting comparison because, the thing that we learned when we did our interview with Goose Island is that basically they took some things out of house and then they basically brought a dump truck full of money towards the barrel aging program and said, throw it into distribution and throw it into barrels and we're going to go fucking nuts with the barrel aging program. But we're going to take some things away from you and we're going to do those in-house.
Sure.
With you guys, it's a very similar situation where it's like go nuts, do the experimental stuff, but without the commercial aspect of it. Nothing that you do needs to sell. You know what I mean? That's a very interesting distinction between the two. Nothing that you do needs to sell, but yet you're free to do whatever you want. That's got to be a very freeing thing. So when you talked about,
in a sense,
okay,
right? I mean, we definitely have our handcuffs.
But when you talked about, wanting to go and be your own brewery and build your own product and all that kind of stuff, the folks who do that, yes, they do get to do their own thing, but they're held to a market standard, what sells and what doesn't. You guys aren't necessarily held to that market standard because nothing's selling. You're not actually selling any of your products, so you literally get to do whatever you want. What would you say are the advantages towards the system that you're running versus the advantages towards a person who's got their own brewery, the craft brewing industry?
For us, especially myself as a brewer, Steve kind of feels the same way. It's very disheartening to make some awesome products that people go just batty over. And when they ask you, where can I buy this? Can I find this at Woodman's? Can I find this here? Where can I get this? I'm just like, you can't. I'm just a big old tease. Sorry. But it is. It does kind of, it hurts deep down knowing that you made an awesome product. And, you feel good about it, knowing that people love it. But at the same time, it's never going to see the light of day. Whereas, if you have your own place, your creations are going to come to life. They're going to be hitting the shelves. It is nice when we do have some fun beers that come down the pipeline that we feed the innovation for, and then you see it on the shelf. You're like, oh, that's cool. Mind you, it's under a different name. Again, like the Big Eddies, the Hofbrau collaboration, they're going to come under different names. For everything for us is all code name. So as Project Nightcrawler, Project Blackhawk, whatever. It's they're all code names down here. So when it finally hits the market, it's under something completely different. And we do work for Blue Moon as well, and just a little bit of everybody. So the fact that our main creations and the stuff we really put a lot of heart and soul into never hits the market makes us sad. So where if you have your own place, it's like, hey, this is killing it. People are loving it. Boom. Let's make this an actual reality and put it out.
Let's talk about something that should be a reality.
This beer right here, right?
Yes.
Freaking delicious.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so this I showcased last year at the Black Friday Harley Fest. It's called Hard Ride. So it's a triple barrel aged strong ale. We aged it in George Dickel triple barrel aged. George Dickel sour mash.
Revolution, eat your heart out.
Brandy barrels, and then Heaven Hill bourbon, and blended them all back together with some of the base. So you get a little bit of every component of each barrel, with a lot of toffee caramel notes. So this was actually Steve's graduation brew. So when I was training him, his final brew, it's like, all right, let's do something fun. This will be your brew to prove to me that you can brew on the system.
Don't fuck this up.
Yeah, exactly.
Prove yourself.
Without me babysitting you. So obviously, I was like the fly on the wall, kind of shadowing him, just kind of watching what he was doing. But so this was a graduation brew, and so we kind of did, we designed the recipe together, and went over recipe design, and it was a fun beer. This is one of his favorites as well, this Hard Ride and the Hugs and Kisses, but it just turned out nice.
It's a little thinner than a stout, right? We're all used to these big BA stouts.
Yeah,
it's a strong
ale. Are we at under 8% on this? Are we able to get into MillerCoors?
Even I can tell the heat.
You get that sugary, you know
9.6.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It showcases the barrels so well. I get so much barrel flavoring out of this.
And also,
it's just amazing.
Something that you say a lot is malt backbone. Very big on this.
It's got the huge malt backbone.
Alex, what do you think?
I think it's really nice. Yeah, as far as a strong ale, you don't get one that's been triple barrel aged, and this one shows all the best characteristics of that. I'm getting the char, I'm getting the vanilla, I'm getting all the best aspects of a barrel age. What sort of barrels did this one go through?
Heaven Hill bourbon, Dickel sour mash, and brandy.
Nice. Oh, the brandy. Okay.
You pick up
that sweetness.
That's what I'm picking up.
That
is
sweetness
that
is amazing.
Yeah, the sweetness from the brandy is.
And sometimes you can, when you taste the beer, it's high in alcohol. This is one of them.
So again, I'm good at MO. I can hide ABV fairly well.
Yeah, you've hit it very well.
No, this one,
several of these beers.
Because we've had so much, we know that.
Sure,
Yeah.
right? You know what to expect. But yeah, for the most part, I can hide ABV fairly well. And it's all about balance at the end of the day. I mean, I preach this all the time. Beer needs to be balanced.
Well, not just for this beer, but all of them. I mean,
Yeah,
one
that's
thing
true.
one thing you've hit is all the aspects of it and the mouthfeel too.
Yep.
is I'm a big mouthfeel guy when it comes to beer, and they've all been perfect. They really have for what the styles are.
I'll tell you what. Let's bring it back to that Tap Takeover, which we kind of put away for a second.
Okay.
But so if you could throw something on the taps for the beer nerds, to get them out of bed in the morning. They only come out for the good stuff.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Do you have anything there for our live tasting that you could kind of throw on for some of the beer?
And you might
nerds
actually
to
have it
try?
here.
I do, actually. And let me pour it up for you guys. Hopefully, it still has held up. So this puppy's over 2 years old, 2 years and change. This guy I had to pull out of my freaking little bottle cellar at home. I have the last couple bottles left over there. So this is a bourbon barrel aged Belgian Quad that we did.
Oh boy.
12%. This was a really fun project. So this was one of those auction beers, funny enough. So what a lot of people don't understand, when they do those auctions, they can create whatever the heck they want, which is kind of sad because sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I really like Miller Lite. I'm like, that's cool. This guy, I was so excited, and he actually threw me a curveball, which even made me even more excited. So his dad was celiac, and he's like, hey, I want to make a beer, but I want my dad to be able to enjoy it with me. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what are you looking for? He's like, I love Belgian Quads. well, let's see.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah,
ding, ding.
let's see. Malt is the backbone, so that's not gonna fly. So I started playing around and I started designing a gluten-free, true gluten, not your Clarex, BS.
Yeah, the
a true gluten-free quad. And so I started making one. And that was a challenge. Like, I was doing small prototypes on our small 40-liter side.
Yep.
And then halfway through, we used to create a product called Coors Peak that was only on the West Coast. It was a full gluten-free pale ale and an amber. And so they stopped producing it. So we had a pallet of it. I told the guy, I'm like, well, how about this? How about since you really want a traditional quad, how about I make your traditional quad and I give you a pallet of this gluten-free that we're going to get rid of for your old man. He's like, done. So I'm like, oh, thank God.
Oh God.
So fuck your dad. We're going to make a good beer.
So we made this quad for him. I designed it, did the regular version for him, and I did a double batch of it. So I took the second batch and threw it into Heaven Hill bourbon barrels.
Nice.
Aged it for 1 month only. So
that's short.
So here's the funny part.
This is really only 1 month.
So this is the funny part.
Was it in smaller?
No, full barrel. So what I've discovered out of my barrel age, because a lot of guys preach, oh, it's got to be a year, 12 months, 6, 8 months, whatever. What I do is obviously, which I'm sure a lot of guys do, you taste your barrels, right?
Yeah.
What I've found is, unless you have a certain component that needs to flatten out, 1 or 2 months I've been putting out barrel aged products. So a lot of these are within 1 or 2 months. Unless I'm doing my sours, then I'm anywhere from like 6 to a couple of years. And then again, the hugs and kisses 3-4 years. But that's because we snagged that from our Liney's 10th Street Brewery.
So when you say tickle, it's really just a little tickle.
It's just a tickle, yeah. That one was probably about a month and a half, 2 months.
So do you think it's a lot of the residual bourbon that's in that wood that comes out right away that's extracted?
Yes. I mean, the barrel aging game it's a weird game, obviously, because you have your temperature conditions, where it's located, all humidity, that all plays into effect. So for all I know, it could just be our building,
Technically, can't you take like a freshly poured barrel of whiskey and fill it 3/4 away with water, and within like 3 months out in the sun, you're gonna have backyard whiskey that's about 10%.
Yeah, you can pull some booze out. We like to say for TTP purposes, it re-ferments in the barrel. It's kind of funny when you hear some of the craft guys. They're like, oh yeah, we used a bottle of Jack for sanitizer, and then it just got absorbed into the barrel. So I'm surprised this is held up. For over 2 years old.
Yeah, there's a touch of oxidation on it.
It's got a little smidge.
And I honestly struck by something within your bottles. They're all twist caps. here.
Yes,
So-
we get that a lot.
Yeah, let's talk about a little. Is that just the product of your company that you're with? Why twist caps? And are you concerned about that at all?
Doesn't
No,
taste
not
like
at all. Not at all. There is no bad to it being twist off. So our main reason for it is our glass suppliers. So we snag glass from our main breweries. We kind of feed off their supplier. It's getting harder and harder for us because we roll all the 205 case glass, and a lot of the breweries are going away to bulk glass. We don't have a DPAL, so it's all manually inserting it into our our infeed. So if we had bulk, I couldn't get it through the door, so I would take a few layers off. and then 2, be, one bottle at a time, putting it on our decal or our case and loader.
I feel business case, use case for internship right here.
Right? We used to do internships, but they started breaking too many things, so we stopped on that.
All right, I think this is a good time to pause, hydrate, and what we're going to do is, because we're having so much fun, we got a few more beers to finish off for the tasting. We're going to come back in a couple weeks. We'll finish up with Kain, and we're going to find out some great stories. So for myself, Jesus,
I'm Jim.
Andy here.
Alex.
Kain.
This has been a Solid Non-Fill production.
He said there's no more beer. no